Alright, today we are doing section 2.4. We are going to be subtracting real numbers. Our objective is to subtract real numbers and simplify expressions involving differences. So our warm-ups are a review of addition from yesterday. Jalen, what did you get for number 1? Very good. They have different signs, so we subtract and keep the sign of the number further from 0. So we get 8. Deja, what'd you get for number 2?
13.
Good. We get negative 13. Again, with different signs, we subtract their absolute values, so 25 minus 12. But we make it negative because the negative 25 had a greater absolute value. On number 3, Jeriel, what'd you get?
0.
Did anybody get something different? Keon?
Negative 24.
Okay. Why is it negative 24 instead of 0?
Because they're both negative.
Okay, good. If they had had opposite signs, they would cancel out to 0.
Yeah, that's what I put out.
Okay. But since they have the same sign, we just add their absolute values and keep it negative. Alright, number 4, Lexi.
60.
Good job. They're both positive. We add them and keep them positive. Number 5, Adrian. What'd you get for number 5 on the warm-ups? What do you think it would be if they've got the same sign and we're adding them together? All right, so we add them together. They're both negative. It stays negative. We get negative 45. Jakeem, what'd you get for number 6? Negative 16. Good. They have different signs, opposite signs, so we subtract and keep the sign of the larger number. Then we are ready to move on to today's lesson. So we should be familiar with subtracting 2 from numbers, right? 3 minus 2, we get 1. 4 minus 2 is 2. 5 minus 2 is 3. 6 minus 2 is 4. That's all stuff we did in, I don't know, kindergarten, first grade, something like that. Subtracting, though, is the same as adding a negative. Subtracting is the same as adding a negative. So we could rewrite all of these subtraction problems as if we were adding a negative 2 instead of just subtracting 2. Which on these might seem silly, but at least we can establish a pattern. So this is like what we would have seen yesterday. We're adding 2 numbers. They have different signs. So we subtract and keep the sign of the number further from 0 with the bigger absolute value. We end up getting the same thing on both of them. This should not be very exciting. Okay, subtracting is the same as adding a negative. Then we'll keep on going. Our definition of subtraction. For all real numbers, the difference A minus B is defined by A plus the opposite of B, or negative B. In other words, change subtraction to addition, then follow the rules for signed numbers that we learned yesterday. Subtracting is adding the opposite. Let's work on some examples. So on these, I'm going to rewrite them as addition problems. Like yesterday, some of them you might not need to do that on, but for the sake of consistency, that's how I'm going to show them. On number 1, If I wanted to rewrite this as an addition problem, I would write 3 plus negative 12. And then I would follow my rules from yesterday. Alright, so I change this to an addition problem, then I apply my rules from yesterday. They have different signs, so I'm going to subtract their absolute values and keep the sign of the number with the larger absolute value. Alright, Dante, if I were to subtract their absolute values, I would take 12 minus 3. What would I get? So I would get 9 from that, but then I need the sign, good, the sign of the number with the bigger absolute value, which would be the 12. So this comes out to a negative 9. On number 2, if I wanted to change this to an addition problem, it would look like negative 7 plus negative 1. Tariana, what would I get on that one? Positive or negative? Both of them are negative, though. So when we add two numbers with the same sign, we add and keep that sign. So we get negative 8. Okay. I think that it's most helpful to do the whole change it to an addition problem on problems like this. Because I can't tell you how many times people look at a problem like that and say that it's negative 6. Because they just do 7 minus 1 and keep a negative sign out in front. So I think it's really helpful to change that one to addition. It's also helpful on the next one. You've heard this a lot. Instead of subtracting a negative, we add a positive. So we change it to addition, and we want the opposite of this number. The opposite of negative 10 is positive 10. So once again, we're adding numbers with opposite signs. Natalie, what'd you get for that?
6.
Wonderful. Okay, we would subtract 10 and 4. We get 6. 10 has the bigger absolute value. 10's positive. Our answer is positive. All right, let's move on. Again, if I wanted to rewrite this, you probably don't want to rewrite this one because it's not as challenging as some of our other ones, but we can show it as addition if we want to. Keon, what do we get on this one? 27, good. So we would subtract their absolute values, keep the sign of the number further from 0. Positive 27 as our answer. On the next one, if I wanted to rewrite it, it would look like 12 plus negative 35. Logan, what would I get? What would I get on this one? 12 plus negative 35? Negative 23, very good. We subtract their absolute values. We keep the sign of the number with the bigger absolute value. Alright, on number 6. If I rewrite it, change it to a positive here, and I change this to its opposite, which is also positive. Kion, what do I get?
7.
On number 6.
6.
Mm-hmm.
Negative 16.
Alright, so then we get a positive 80. Number 7. To change it to an addition problem, we keep the sign out in front, we change it to addition, we change the sign on the last number so it becomes positive. Jaquan, what do we get? Negative 50. Subtract them, keep the sign of the bigger number. That would be negative 56, so negative 50. On this one, we change it to an addition problem. We change this to a negative 3.5. Jamarl, what do we get? Well, we should be paying attention following along, but we are on number 8. So we should still be paying attention, though. We get negative 12.2 because they have the same sign. We just add their absolute values and keep it negative. All right, on this section, this is a little different from what we've seen before. We are not evaluating these because we don't know what x and y equal. All we're doing is simplifying them or rewriting them. Okay, so if we are subtracting x plus 14, then that means we are subtracting both x and 14. You might have seen this as like distributing a negative. So it would turn into minus x minus 14. If we're subtracting something in parentheses, we're subtracting the whole thing. On 10, we'll do something similar. The y that's out in the very front is just going to stay out in the very front for now. But we learned on our last problem that if we are subtracting a whole set of parentheses, that we're subtracting both pieces in the parentheses. So we're subtracting y and we're subtracting 6. Now we're going to combine like terms, which we haven't done a whole lot of yet this year. What terms can get combined? Keon? We're still on number 10. The y's, right? We've got plus y and a minus y. What are those going to combine to give us? I gave you a y and then I took it away. How many do you have? 0. That makes a 0 pair. They cancel each other out. If I give you one and I take it away, you don't have one anymore. They're 0. So they're just gone. So what are we left with? Negative 6. Good. We keep that sign that's in front of it. Then let's try number 11. What's going to just come down to hang out in front? The 5. What would I write next? Minus x and minus 8. Now this one's a little bit different from 10. We don't have the variables canceling out. But we can combine the 5 and the 8. To make it a little easier, I'm going to rewrite it as an addition problem. Remember, any subtraction problem can be rewritten as addition. And addition, I can switch up the order that I do things in, like we did yesterday. I can't combine the 5 with the x or the x with the 8. I can't do any of that. But I could combine the 5 and the minus 8, the negative 8 in the back. Sorry, it got stuck. Okay. So we're going to combine the negative 8 with the 5. So just kind of ignore the x in the middle. 5 plus negative 8. May, what would that give me? A negative 3, very good. And then you can just leave this as plus negative x, or you could rewrite it as just minus x. Either way would be fine. Then we will go on. All right, on number 12. Again, this minus y out in front is going to stay out in front for now. I am subtracting what's inside. So I am subtracting the negative y, and I am subtracting the 4. Notice I didn't bother changing any of the signs yet. I just rewrote it out. This time I'm going to change some signs. The negative y out in front is still just a negative. I'm going to change this to adding the opposite. So adding a positive y and adding a negative 4. We can always rewrite subtraction problems as adding the opposite. Looking at what we have now, we've got a negative y plus y. Those are opposites. We talked about yesterday how opposites add up to 0. So they cancel out. If you really want to, you could rewrite it as 0 plus negative 4, but you don't have to. Hopefully you know if something zeroes out, you're just going to be left with negative 4. On number 13, again, if I'm subtracting the parentheses, I'm subtracting everything in the parentheses. So I'm subtracting n, and I'm subtracting negative 5. I'm going to rewrite this with addition signs. So adding negative n and adding the opposite would mean I'm just adding a positive 5. Once again, our variables are opposites, and we're adding them together, which means they zero out. So we have 0 plus 5, or just 5. Who can raise their hand and tell me something they got on number 14? Deja.
I got
1. Anybody get anything other than 1? Keon?
No, I got
Okay. Jamal?
-1.
Negative 1. Any other possibilities? Okay. So let's work it out and see if we agree with either of these. I, once again, prefer to write it as an addition problem. If you did not do that, that's not a big deal, as long as you did the problem right. In this case, you would have needed to work from left to right, but I like to make it all addition so I can do whatever order I want. Okay, once it's all addition, I am going to take my positive numbers and combine them. When I take 12 plus 4, what do I get? 16. I am also going to combine my numbers that were both negative. That gives me negative 15. When I combine those, so 16 plus negative 15, what do I get? Well, we know we get a 1. We all agree on that. Which one of these numbers has the bigger absolute value? 16. And 16 is positive. So our answer is positive. All right, then let's see if 14 is the right answer. You know me, I like to write it all as addition, so that's what I am going to do. That makes it really easy for me to combine because the ones that have the same sign are next to each other. So 16 plus 5 is 21, plus negative 4 plus negative 3 is negative 7. We have different signs, so we subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. That does end up giving us a positive 14. Good job, class. Questions or concerns about number 16? All right. Then, number 17, what do we get? Negative what?
19.
Negative 19. Anybody else get anything else? Negative 9. Keon? 41. Okay. Any other options? All right, let's see if one of these is correct. I'm changing my subtraction problems to addition problems. I'm going to combine all of my positive numbers first. That would just be 4 and 20, giving me 24. Then I combine my negative numbers. Negative 6 plus negative 19 plus negative 8. Negative 33. We subtract their absolute values. 33 minus 24 gives us 9. 33 is the bigger number and it's negative, so our answer is negative 9. If astronauts traveled from the sunny side of the moon to the dark side, they would find the temperature 220 degrees Celsius lower than on the sunny side. If the temperature on the sunny side was 90 degrees Celsius, what was it on the dark side? Okay, so we are going to take the sunny side and combine it with the difference to find the dark side. So the sunny side was 90 degrees. If the temperature was 220 degrees Celsius lower, what operation do you think I need? A negative or subtraction. So you could think about it as subtracting 220 or adding a negative 220. Either way you think about it is fine. And either way you do it, what do we get? We know it'll be negative because the negative number is way bigger. Carl, did you get it? Negative 130. So on the dark side, it would have been negative 130 degrees Celsius. Mars is 141.5 millions of miles from the sun. Earth is 48 6/10 millions of miles closer to the sun than Mars is. How far is Earth from the sun? So, on this one we have that Mars is this far away. If it is closer, Earth is closer, then it is less far away. So we could subtract off that difference. It's that much closer, we can subtract off that difference. Again, you could write it as if you're adding the opposite. $92.9, is that what you said? 92.9 millions of miles away.